So let's start with the mathematics of doom. I want you to picture a specific moment in 1940.
Okay.
It's September 15th. The top brass of Japan, they're all meeting at the Prime Minister's residence in Tokyo.
And the air is thick with this one. Single question.
Right. Prime Minister Prince Fumimaro Konoe has to know, what are our actual chances in a war against the United States?
And the scene, it's just so full of irony. The man he's asking is Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto.
The future commander of the fleet.
And he's a heavy smoker, famously so. He's sitting there apparently stubbing out his American-made Lucky Strike cigarette while being asked to calculate a war he absolutely does not want.
So when Konoe finally asks that question, Yamamoto doesn't give him some, patriotic speech.
No, not at all. He gives him a prediction. It's so cold, so precise, it sounds less like a forecast and more like an expiration date for the entire empire.
What were his exact words?
He said, "If I'm told to fight, regardless of consequences, I shall run wild for the first 6 months or a year."
Okay, that's the part everyone remembers.
Right, but it's the second half that's the killer. He says, "But I have utterly no confidence for the second or third year."
6 months of glory. Then it's over.
And this wasn't just a gut feeling. It was data analysis.
Which is the whole mission for our deep dive today. We're going to trace how he got that number, how his time in America and its factories, its oil fields, gave him this perfect, agonizing foresight.
He literally did the math. And this is the story of a prophet whose warnings were just ignored because, well, the truth contradicted a national delusion.
So where does this prophet come from?
Well, to get why his peers just couldn't see what he saw, you need a little context. He was born Isoroku. Takano Isoroku literally means 56, his father's age.
And he was a veteran. He fought at Tsushima in 1905, a huge victory over Russia. He even lost 2 fingers there.
Right, and that's the key. That battle, Tsushima, became this national track. It convinced a whole generation of Japanese leaders that their spiritual superiority, their sheer fighting will, could overcome any material disadvantage.
But Yamamoto knew better.
He knew Russia was a mess, thousands of miles from home, on the verge of revolution. The U.S. was a whole different animal. He realized to fight America, you had to understand it.
Which is why, in 1919, he shows up at Harvard.
Yeah, imagine this. He's a 35-year-old naval commander in civilian clothes walking around Cambridge, Massachusetts. And he's reportedly carrying 2 swords with him.
His official reason for being there was English, right? Where he got a C+F.
A mediocre C+F. But his real mission was observation. The classroom was irrelevant. The country itself was the lesson.
And what's so striking is just how obsessive he was about it.
Totally. He slept maybe 3-4 hours a night. His small apartment was just cluttered with maps of U.S. oil fields, technical journals, industrial statistics. He was basically running an intelligence op-den out of the Harvard Library.
And what was the first thing he locked onto?
Oil. He saw that the future was going to be powered by petroleum.
And his findings must have been chilling.
They were damning. He found that America produced 65% of the world's oil, about 378 million barrels a year back then.
And Japan.
Japan had to import almost every single drop, and most of it came from America. He knew that was a leash they could yank any time.
His real education, though, came on the road.
Right. During his summer breaks, he wasn't on vacation. He was hitchhiking, sometimes just living on bananas to save money. And his destination was the absolute heart of American industry.
Which brings him to Detroit, summer of 1920.
Exactly. The Ford Highland Park plant. And he just stands there and watches. He sees 20,000 workers clock out, and most of them walk to their own private cars.
Something you would just never see in Japan.
Never. Then he tours the assembly line. He watches a brand new Model T get built every 45 seconds. The whole thing, from a pile of steel to a finished car, took 93 minutes.
The numbers had to be just hard to even process.
They were almost beyond comprehension for him. Ford had more industrial workers than the entire Japanese Navy.
Right.
Ford's daily use of steel was more than Japan produced in a week. And Yamamoto's insight was immediate. He wrote that the Americans have, and this is a quote, made manufacturing into a science. They produce machines the way we produce rice.
It's not about the cars. It's about what that production means.
It's about conversion. If you can make cars that fast, you can make tanks, trucks, aircraft engines just as fast. The American workforce was already trained for a modern industrial war.
And he didn't stop in Detroit.
No, the next year he's hitchhiking again, this time to the oil fields of East Texas, to what he called the Fountains of Power.
Some Bindletop.
Bindletop. He sees a landscape just covered in oil derricks, like a forest of machines, and he sees them burning off natural gas for months on end, just as a waste.
The casual waste of pure energy.
Was the absolute opposite of Japan, where every drop of fuel was precious. He sketched the Tekitika refinery at Port Arthur, 100,000 barrels a day, and he wrote in his journal, "Oil is the blood of modern warfare. America has oceans of it."
Japan has none. This single fact determines everything.
That was the core of his arithmetic. So when he comes back in 1926, he's no longer a student.
Now he's the naval attaché in Washington, D.C. He has access.
And his mission is simple.
Yeah.
Has that industrial giant peaked? Or is it still growing?
And what he found was acceleration.
Exponential growth. Car production was heading towards 4.3 million a year. Oil was over 770 million barrels. The gap he saw at Harvard wasn't closing, it was getting wider and faster.
So he hits the road again, touring the industrial titans.
He goes to Bethlehem Steel in Pennsylvania. He sees them making specialized naval armor plate with electric furnaces in hours, a process that took weeks in Japan.
And it was the efficiency of it all.
The whole supply chain.
Yeah.
Ore from Minnesota, coal from Pennsylvania, limestone from Indiana, all coming together like clockwork. Japan's economy just couldn't replicate that.
You know, it wasn't just about factories, though. There's that famous story about the poker games.
The Friday night poker games in Washington. Yes.
That's right.
He wasn't just playing cards, he was studying the American psyche.
What could you possibly learn from a card game?
He learned they were aggressive risk takers. They'd make huge bets. They were comfortable with losing big. And he realized it wasn't recklessness, it was confidence.
Confidence that comes from having deep pockets.
They owned the bank, and he actually said it. After winning one big pot, he told them, Japan is playing with borrowed chips against a player who owns the bank.
That's a chilling image. He saw the whole war reflected in a poker hand.
Absolutely. The U.S. could lose a few battleships. They could absorb the loss. Japan couldn't afford a single major defeat.
He also started focusing on a new dimension of war.
Aviation. He knew the future was in the air, even while his own Navy was still obsessed with giant battleships.
So we go to the aircraft factories.
The Glenn L. Martin Company. He sees them using the same assembly line techniques he saw in Detroit, but for airplanes. The U.S. was already making thousands of planes a year, civilian and military. Japan was struggling to build a couple hundred.
He said the Americans think in 3 dimensions.
Right. And his final crushing piece of evidence came from Henry Ford's River Rouge complex.
Just the scale of that place. 2,000 acres. 100,000 workers.
25,000 cars in the employee parking lot alone.
It was a city. A self-contained industrial city.
And that's where he put the final equation together. Unlimited raw materials plus unlimited production capacity plus unlimited innovation
Equals inevitable victory. And Japan had none of those.
So he goes back to Japan in 1928 and he submits this huge 200-page report. It's all there in black and white. U.S. manufacturing is 10, 20 times greater. Steel, 12 times. Oil.
100 times greater. So if they had these numbers, if the military saw this, why on earth did they think a quick war was even possible? Was the delusion that strong?
It was systemic. His report was classified, filed, and basically just ignored.
Why?
Because the ruling military factions, they'd already decided on war. His data was inconvenient. It was uncomfortable. They said it was outside of naval concerns, which was code for it contradicts what we want to believe.
So the man with the facts became suspect.
He became too Americanized. He valued empirical data over patriotic spirit, and for that, he became a target. By 1939, ultranationalists wanted him dead.
Which is how he ends up in command of the fleet. They had to send him to sea to save his life from their own radicals.
The supreme irony of history. The one man who knew, mathematically, that the war was suicide was put in charge of fighting it. He wrote a friend saying it was like being asked to perform surgery on a patient who insists on committing suicide.
So when he starts planning Pearl Harbor, his whole strategy is based on that American psychology you studied.
Exactly. He knew he couldn't win a material war. The only long shot was a psychological one.
A knockout blow.
A shock so devastating that a complacent America might negotiate before its factories could even warm up. But he knew. Even as he planned it, he knew. He told his staff they were insects declaring war on a dragon.
December 7th, 1941. The 6-month clock starts ticking. Pearl Harbor is a massive tactical success. Japan is celebrating.
And Yamamoto goes to his cabin. He's grim because he's focused on what they didn't hit.
The carriers weren't there.
The carriers were at sea, and crucially, the oil tanks and the repair yards were mostly untouched. He'd seen American ports. He knew how fast they could get those ships back in the fight.
His actual words were much less triumphant than the public reaction.
Far from it. He said he'd rather wait for an appraisal after seeing what the enemy does. He knew all they had done was poke the bank owner.
And then, almost exactly 6 months later, the clock strikes 0.
June 4th, 1942, the Battle of Midway. Japan loses 4 of its best carriers, irreplaceable carriers, and Yamamoto knew his prophecy was fulfilled. He told his staff, "The American giant is now fully awake. From this moment, we fight only to delay the inevitable."
And the industrial tsunami he predicted, the one he measured back in the 20s, it just it materialized.
With terrifying precision, let's just look at the scale of it.
Go ahead.
In the 18 months after Midway, the U.S. launches 17 fleet carriers and 76 escort carriers.
In Japan.
6 in total. By 1943, an American factory is producing an aircraft every 5 minutes.
That Ford Willow Run plant, the one that didn't even exist when he was in Detroit.
They built it in 9 months, and it started churning out B-24 bombers, one every 63 minutes. It was the perfect proof of his theory, turning car manufacturing into an unstoppable weapon of war.
And the oil.
The oil situation became fatal. America's producing 1.7 billion barrels a year. Japan's reserves are shrinking to nothing. His diary says it all. "I told them about the oil. Now our ships sit in port for lack of fuel."
Even his death in April 43 was a validation of his math.
A brutal validation. American codebreakers, a technology Japan couldn't match, intercepted his exact flight plan.
Operation Vengeance.
Executed by P-38 Lightning fighters, twin-engine, long-range planes. They were the very product of the mass production he warned them about, fueled by Texas oil, guided by intelligence they couldn't counter. The man who saw the factories was killed by their output.
And the final numbers, they just put a cap on the whole tragedy.
300,000 U.S. aircraft to Japan's 76,000, 141 U.S. carriers to Japan's 16. And then there's the Manhattan Project.
A $2 billion project with 130,000 workers.
That one project cost more than Japan's entire wartime military budget. It was the final, devastating exclamation point on American industrial might.
Yamamoto's own words are the best summary. Mathematics, not courage, determines victory. The mathematics doom us.
He knew the disease was industrial inferiority, and it was fatal.
His tragedy is that he was the one leader who saw the numbers clearly, but was forced to lead a war his own data proved was lost from the start. His notes from Ford and the Texas oil fields were more accurate than his country's entire military plan.
A prophet without honor. He understood that modern war is won in the factory and in the supply chain long before it's won on the battlefield.
And that really brings us to the lesson for today, doesn't it? It's bigger than just history. Yamamoto's tragedy was being part of a leadership that chose comfortable illusions over hard empirical evidence.
The math.
The math. So you have to ask yourself, how often today in business and politics do we ignore the undeniable numbers because the truth is just too painful to deal with?
It's a profound warning. Whether you're a company ignoring your own supply chain data or a country ignoring its crumbling infrastructure, Yamamoto's story is a reminder. Choosing a comforting narrative of exceptionalism over a painful industrial reality, well, that's a disease that can still prove fatal.